Hi everyone, I am Night Shifter and welcome to my Baseku combo guide for 2024. What better way to start off the new year than with the form that started it all, the base form. It's about time I made a guide for my favorite character in this game, so let's get into it. To preface this whole thing, this isn't gonna be the kind of combo guide you might usually see, where I just present a bunch of optimal combos and that's it. Instead, I'm gonna explain everything I know about what moves go into what, how you can use them, that kind of stuff, with a few rough examples here and there so you can see what I'm talking about. This video is meant to help you get an understanding for how to craft your own combos and how to find routes that are reliable for you as a player more than anything else. Baseku's combo structure is extremely flexible and allows for tons of player expression once you get the hang of it. His combos can be as easy or as difficult as you want them to be for the most part, and the harder they are, the more damage you get out of them. Despite having a very simple foundation that's accessible to anyone, Baseku needs a lot of labbing because, while his absurd damage is one of his main appeals, you have to work pretty hard to get it most of the time. A few of his moves also have some random quirks that you may need to adapt to on the fly during combos. That kind of stuff is why it's very hard to decide on what's truly optimal with this character and why I encourage you to create your own combos. I'm going to go over everything that I know about this character's combo theory, from the basics of the basics, stuff that you can start learning even if you literally just picked up the game, to more advanced things for those ready to push the character as far as possible. At the end, there will also be a section dedicated to Kaioken routes and how to optimize them. Feel free to skip ahead to the timestamps that interest you. Without further ado, let's begin. We're gonna start with a crash course that explains combo stuff that applies to the whole cast. Let's look at a couple of baseline combos you can get started with. You can do these anywhere at any time. If you have no idea what you just read, make sure to familiarize yourself with numpad notation, since every DBFZ player uses it. The letters are just the LMHS button layout this game uses, where L is light, M is medium, H is heavy, and S is special. These are also called normals. A true M would be a crouching medium, while a 5M would just be a standing medium with no directional input, for example. JC stands for jump cancel, which is basically just jumping after a normal, and J means jumping, so j.L would be a jumping light attack. Get the hang of the combo from earlier if you can, and then come back later for the info dump I'm about to unleash on you. Everyone's true M is a launcher, as in it pops up the opponent and sends them in the air for a pickup. You might have noticed when I did true M there, Krillin got popped off the ground. For Baseku in particular though, his 5LL also launches. This means combo strings like 5LL, 5M, 2M are impossible for him. Across the cast, you can jump cancel 5L, 5LL, and 5M, as well as any air normals besides JS. You cannot jump cancel any other normals. This game has a fairly simple Gatling system, which basically just refers to how normals string into each other. L buttons Gatling into M's, M's go into H's, or you can also do M's into S's, and H and S buttons can kinda just go into each other. You can also skip from L straight to H if you want, or S. The only real restriction is that you can't go backwards, so no M buttons into L or anything. You also can't cancel a full 5LLL into other normals. Things are a little bit different when it comes to air normals, since you can do j.M into j.L there. Lastly, you can cancel any normal whatsoever into whatever special move you want, whether that's a light, a medium, or a heavy, or an air normal, anything goes. Overall, the Gatling system is pretty freeform, so mess around with it as much as you'd like before we move on. Why am I doing j.LL instead of j.MH at the end? How does that work? Well, in this game, there also exists an air auto combo of sorts. The 5LLL auto combo is actually made up of a light, a medium, and a heavy that are unique to every character rather than 3 lights. The same goes for j.LL. If you do j.LL instead of j.LM, it forces your height relative to your opponent to autocorrect basically. Because of its nature as an auto combo, it wants to make sure it will never drop. If you tried doing j.LMH instead in that combo from earlier, you'd notice Baseku would start falling down after j.L instead of going upwards. The combo I showed earlier also gives you an idea of how smash property works. Smash is basically what happens when you get a cinematic close-up after a normal, like after j.2h here, or after j.H here. You might have also noticed the smash text on the left side of the screen. Smash property gives the moves that consume them a little extra damage. When you consume smash on a move that sends opponents flying upwards, also called up smash, like j.2h or 2h, the next move that sends them downwards, like j.H here, also consumes smash, which we call down smash, and it sends them into a sliding knockdown, which is what you want at the end of any combo you do ideally, since it makes it easier to keep the pressure on your opponent afterwards. An alternative go-to combo. Here you can see the quarter circle forward for Kamehameha, notated as 236, down, down, forward, forward, and S. For quarter circle back, the notation would be 214. Oftentimes you'll consume your smash using 5H, where things are slightly different, because 5H does not send opponents flying upwards but forwards, so we can call this forward smash. If you try to end in j.H after a forward smash, you'll notice you won't get a sliding knockdown. Thankfully, Baseku is fortunate enough to have a special move in j.2m that always consumes down smash regardless of what you did beforehand. So he can pretty much always get a knockdown like this. It's not as good as a j.H knockdown, but it's still very handy. His 1, 2, or 3 SSS, this move here, acts in the same way, and you can see after a 5H, if you do 3 SSS, it gives him a knockdown. In some cases, you can use down smash and then another kind of smash afterwards. Baseku's go-to combo starter after landing a raw 2 SSS is 236H. Keep in mind, however, that once you consume down smash, you won't be able to get another knockdown in your combo anymore. There are certain moves that always have smash property no matter what though, and these apply across the cast. Every character's 5LLL will always have smash, no matter how many times you use it in a combo. Vanishing in the middle of a combo always triggers a forward smash as well, but only once. Lastly, if you can end your combo with j.DR, it will always give you a sliding knockdown no matter if down smash was used beforehand. The most common way to do this is vanish into j.DR. But you can also do j.H into an assist and Dragon Rush from there. However, you can only Dragon Rush once per combo. So if you start with Dragon Rush, you should just take the j.H knockdown usually. If you really want to get more damage though, you can do this Vanish extension here, where you just combo anything into Vanish, do a slightly delayed j.36L, and then continue from there. An important rule to follow when creating damaging combos is big hits first. Your best scaling normals are M and H buttons, which we also call unscaled starters, and you will get the most damage starting with them. They also allow for longer combos generally. Scaled starters are stuff like L buttons, key blasts, or jump-ins. Notice the difference in damage between a scaled starter and an unscaled starter. You want to use your character's highest damaging moves at the start and keep the smaller stuff for later in the combo. For example, with Baseku, 236S, 3SSS, and his Spirit Ball each do lots of damage, so you often see his TODs start out with these moves. Remember this rule especially when you want to squeeze out as much damage as possible. And finally, for the last part that's universal, this game uses a system we call hitstun decay to ensure that we can't just do infinitely long combos. The longer your combo is, the less hitstun each move will have, aka the less combo time they give you, until eventually the combo just drops if you aren't careful. Hence, the hitstun of each move decays as the combo goes on. If this wasn't the case, Baseku for instance could just loop 5LLL in the corner forever until his opponent died, but thankfully this isn't the case. This isn't possible because the combo just drops if you make it too long. At high hitstun decay, Vanish j.DR is a finicky ender, and that's across the cast. It pretty much always works if you're mid-screen or if your Vanish faces the corner, but if you vanish into the corner, it will drop more often than not, as you'll see here in a second. Just like that. Baseku is lucky to have j.M, which has lots of hitstun whether smashless or not, and drags opponents to the ground like this for consistent run-up DR enders. But there's a few cases at very high hitstun decay where he would prefer ending in JS j.36L for extra damage, because there's some levels of hitstun decay where j.M doesn't work, but JS j.36L does. When that happens, you should be aware of your screen positioning, or cut out a normal or two so j.M works instead, should you be in the corner. That was a shit ton of info, wasn't it? On the bright side, if you can get an intuitive understanding for all that stuff, you should be able to create pretty decent combos for any situation with basically the entire roster. My advice here is to take everything one step at a time. Go in training mode and experiment with each property I talked about earlier until you get a feel for how things work. And feel free to re-watch any explanations or examples as many times as you need. If you're a beginner to the game, the part of the video dedicated to you ends here. Good luck, and I look forward to when you're ready for the rest of it. No rush though, take your time. Now then, let's move on to the more Baseku-specific stuff. As a rule of thumb, Baseku wants to include beams in his combos as much as possible, since they do lots of damage. Midscreen you will often do 5LLL 236S or 5H 236S and Superdash from there. Sequences like 2M 236S don't lead into anything, but 5H 236S does, because Baseku's beam gets tons of extra hitstun when you land it from far away, or when it hits meaty, but we'll talk about that later. If you want to really maximize your damage, you can do 236S, 3SSS, Superdash, and go from there. But remember that spends your down smash. This is pretty much the extent of what you want to do mid-screen when you're just starting out. When it comes to combos off stray hits, 5S combos into 236S when you do all 6 key blasts, and from there you can 3SSS for an easy knockdown, or just Superdash after the beam. 5S can also go into 236H for a better combo, if you want. You can also extend off 3SSS with a slightly delayed J236H like so, or you can do an upwards angled beam, though you have to be careful with how you spend your smash property after this. Just like this. A raw 236S combos into Superdash when landed from far away, but it won't go into 3SS unless the opponent was launched beforehand by something like the 5H because they're at the lower height. Or unless you Tiger Knee 236S like this. It has to be pretty much a perfect Tiger Knee, which I personally can't do consistently, but if you have the execution for it, you should do this anytime you use your beam in neutral, because not only do you get better conversions from it, it also just recovers much faster. For things like Superdash confirms, you can usually just JS, J236H and enjoy your full combo from there. You can either run up 5LLL or run up 2M, or if you think you're too high up, you can try dash jumping into an air button. From higher up, you can also do J236S into a ground 236S Superdash to continue. A lot of the time, you should also be able to just run up into ground normals after that air beam. The reason this works is because the air beam hits meaty late into its active frames, so it gets extra hit stun, and Baseku just touches the ground really quickly after it, so that's why he just gets to run up there. The same rule applies to the ground beam, so if you can make it hit meaty too, or if you just land it against an opponent that's really high up in the air, you might be able to run up 2M after it too. Note that this is a lot more difficult on smaller characters though. However, if you're too high up in the air, you can only really follow up the elbow with a dash up j.DR. Should you reach the corner with it, it will also bounce them way out of the corner, so you need to wait a moment for Baseku to turn around before you j.DR. You will need some awareness, but if you're not sure, you can always just combo into j2h, j2m and be done with it. Another option you have is to combo into a down-angled air beam like this and pick up from there. This routing in particular is also very useful for maximizing Baseku's damage off a 2H. Be careful not to delay the beam too much, as it will put them into a short sliding knockdown. In terms of what you do after Vanish, 5LLL 236S will do just fine, and you can follow it up with either 3SSS or a Superdash conversion into J2M. 5LLL can also Sideswitch if you dash in deep enough under your opponent. If you catch the opponent low enough to the ground, it's also possible to do 2L 5LLL like this and go from there. Another option you have is to do 2M5H 2SSS into up beam like this. This isn't usually optimal, but it's pretty reliable and gives a ton of corner carry if you need it. Make sure you don't catch your opponent too low to the ground, because otherwise the up beam super dash won't work properly. If you aren't sure and don't want to risk it, just doing 1 2S into the beam also works 100% consistently. And as you saw there, sometimes the 5H will side switch for no discernible reason. I think it has something to do with how deep you dash in beforehand. But yeah, be aware that sometimes you'll get random side switches with this. Yet another option you have is to use his air beam for it like this. That is a pretty high damage Vanish confirm. Note that setting up a height where J236S Super Dash connects tends to be finicky, but the setup I showed earlier always works for it. Also note the super jump cancel I did after 5M. Air combos using J236S also don't work at very high hit stun decay, so don't be surprised if you see them less in more optimal routes. One more optional thing you can do is to start your Vanish confirms with an IAD j.MS like this and go from there. You need to delay the JM a tiny bit so Baseku has time to get right up in their face, and also delay JS a bit so Baseku has time to touch the ground fast enough to pick up with a 2M or dash up 5LLL. Now here's something important you should note, and this applies to basically any mid-screen combo. There's a sour spot near the corner where 2-3-6S Superdash just won't work no matter what. If you think you've reached this point, just skip the beam entirely after 5LLL, or maybe go for 2M5H 2-3-6S instead, since it moves Baseku forward more than the previous thing does. I heavily recommend this also if you do combos of 2-on-4L Vanish facing the corner, or of just 2-on-4H, like this. If you have Spirit Ball charged, you always want to use it at the start of your combos because it deals huge damage, and remember the rule is big hits first. You can use it right after 5H, after a faraway 2-3-6S, after any 5LLL, after any part of 3SSS, whether that's the key blasts or after the actual knockdown. You can even use it after 2-on-4M, funnily enough, and even after a smash j.MH, which significantly boosts his damage off 2H. As for what you can do after it hits, you can follow it up with Superdash or just 2SSS. This one won't come up often, but if you've spent down smash, it's possible to do this kind of combo using a level 3 bomb. It's high damage and it's really cool looking. Only problem is it doesn't work against GT Goku in particular. Why? Your guess is as good as mine, honestly. It's janky hurt boxes. We're finally getting into corner combos. In the corner, Baseku's beam lets him do some cool loops. This here should be your go-to corner route. Make sure to air dash before the j.L. Usually you should be able to repeat this twice. The most basic corner BNB using this concept looks like this. Get this combo down and you'll be set for a good while. Come back when you're ready for more nuance. So the wacky part is the combo from earlier drops if you add even just one more button to the start, as you can see here. So what do we do? Well, if you just do 5LLL or 5LL5H at the start instead of 5LL 2M5H, the combo is stable again since you don't consume as much hitstun decay at the start. When you land a hit, you should keep your wits about you and make sure you don't do too much stuff before spending your smash. Another option you have is to just do 5LL at the end and jump cancel it into an air combo like shown here. This is a good save when you mess up or you don't remember what you started with, and sometimes it's actually slightly better than doing the full auto combo because it consumes less hitstun decay and might just let you get an extra hit in, but most of the time this makes you lose out on a little damage. Baseku also has a unique way to Sideswitch when his back is to the corner. Doing 2M 2-on-4L lets him continue with his corner loops. Yes, you can combo off a raw 2-on-4L like this too, if you're close enough to the corner behind you. Baseku also has a completely different alternative for a corner combo that does similar damage. Here you need to make sure to delay the 2-3-6S after 5LLL a bit, so that Baseku doesn't get pushed out of the corner as far, otherwise his Superdash will whiff. This side switch setup is also particularly useful for getting high damage into a Vanish j.DR or Vanish DR 2-3-6S ender like this, as you can blink 5L delay 5LL or just 5L delay 5M after the air beam to keep the opponent out of the corner. Yup, we're getting into the foundation of Baseku's best combos, delays. Before that stuff though, it's worth noting if you do this combo from mid-screen, reaching the corner in the middle of it, you are still able to link 5LLL after the air beam. If you have the spatial awareness to do this, by all means go for it. Also, Baseku can do the Sideswitch without spending smash as well, off 5LL j.M. starters specifically. Where normally he can only link his air beam back into 5LL or into 5M, this also allows him to actually link into j.M. However, I'm pretty sure this is the only corner setup where he can link beam j.M. This is really good to set up certain level 3 mix-ups for other characters like this. Anyway, yeah, delays. We know j.SSS is our best ender for Oki, but how do we even get it? Well, with a simple delay like this. How did I land that j.M. at the end? It's really hard to notice just watching the video, but what I did was air dash j.L. into a slightly delayed j.S. Doing this lets Goku touch the ground more quickly than if I didn't delay j.S. at all, and so he has enough time to j.M. After that I delayed my 5S a bit because it would whiff otherwise, and then I ended with 5H j.SSS. Practice these delays until you can do it consistently because this is really important for him. It's also possible to end with 5 whole ki blasts before 5H, as you can see here. However, this is a lot more difficult to time. The smaller the delay on JS, the lower to the ground Baseku's j.M. catches the opponent, and the more consistent it is to use multiple 5S shots after it. For me personally, 4 ki blasts is most consistent, but for you it might be 2 or 3, or maybe you're built different and can always land all 5, or maybe just sticking with 1 is fine for you. Find what's most comfortable for you. You may have also noticed this ender worked despite me doing a lot of hits at the start of the combo. That's part of why it's so good. It's very consistent and sometimes even optimal damage-wise off scaled starters. Ending every corner combo like this is a great idea, since you still do a lot of damage and you get a free Genki charge on top of it. Even if you decide you'd rather get more damage, you're free to add in a true 3 success after the true SSS, and then call an assist and end with a Dragon Rush if you want. The only instance where you shouldn't use this ender is if you're going for absolute max damage to secure a kill, in which case you'd be using true SSS early in your combo. Again, practice this ender religiously. If you do really want to go for the kill, you should true SSS at the start right after 5H. In the corner, true SSS links into 5L or 2L, and from there you can go into loops. Should you ever land a raw true SSS in the corner, you can link that into j.36m, though it's a bit tricky to time. You can't get a knockdown by normal means after using true SSS, but you can always end in j.H assist j.DR, or alternatively, using j.M into a delayed vanish, like this, allows you to consistently get a ground DR ender into supers, like this. If your hitstun decay isn't too high, you can also do a slightly delayed j.36s into another 236s and go into Kaioken from there, and this does a little more damage than Dragon Rush. If you land your vanish as low to the ground as possible, doing 214m into 236s is the optimal combo ender. But it doesn't work against bigger characters, This is only really practical against smalls. 214H to 36S, however, is universal, but takes some extra meter and doesn't actually add any extra damage over the medium grab. Another option you have though is to do 214M into an assist call and then dash up Dragon Rush 236S. This works with basically any assist if you can time it correctly. If you have a Spirit Ball available, your starter should always involve 5H 214S and then backdashing into 1SSS, then doing the rest of the combo. If you want to use your bomb later in the combo though, it will always work after any 5LLL. You can then dash under the opponent, go for a Sideswitch J2M, and go for a DR 236S ender, or just j.DR by vanishing a little earlier. You can also exploit 5LLL 214S into 1SSS as a pretty strong combo ender, because not only do you get the extra damage in meter from the bomb, but you also regain it immediately. Finally, if you want to end the combo with Super Spirit Bomb, there's a variety of ways to do so. At the end of any combo, you can vanish and just J236S immediately into it. This will work at any hitstun decay. You can also combo into it after buttons that consume up smash like 2H or J2H, as you can see here. A quick example, it lands. It also works after any level of Spirit Ball at pretty much any hitstun decay, and you can also do it after up beam, but keep in mind that at high hitstun decay, up beam into Super Spirit Bomb doesn't work against Krillin. At lower levels, it's just fine though. And lastly, you can also combo into it right after a cinematic 214M, which is pretty funny to nuke people with. That is a whole 50%, not bad. From here on out, there will be another step up in difficulty for the things I'm gonna talk about, so come back only when you feel ready. Alright, it's time to talk Rejumps. Rejumps are absolutely integral to Baseku's optimal combos mid-screen, and they ensure that he reaches the corner off any hit. His easiest rejump in my opinion is the standard j.M. rejump, which looks like this. That works after any starter. For Baseku, this is actually easier than average because other characters have to delay Superdash a specific amount in order to do this rejump, while he does not. However, buffering in the 669, the dash jump, can still be tricky. This will require a lot of practice, especially if you've never done it before. It helps to input the dash jump as soon as you see j.M. hit. In order to remain on the same side, you must also hold down Superdash until after your dash jump. Why? Holding down S in this game makes every jump a super jump automatically, as you can see here in my input display. And Superdash is technically just processed as H and S pressed together. So holding down Superdash while doing your dash jump makes it become a dash super jump which goes higher. If you don't do this, the combo will have a tendency to drop, as you can see here, unless you dash jump into j.L. delay j.LL, but you might notice this side switches. When you get the hang of that dash jump input, you can also squeeze in another j.L. for a bit more damage if you decide to delay the super dash as well, as seen here. The super dash should be delayed right about until the opponent splats off the wall, so that it hits them as low to the ground as possible. The timing might be difficult to figure out initially, but it becomes a lot easier once you get a feel for it and it turns into muscle memory. Rejumping is also possible after 5LLL, but the timing is much tighter and it doesn't come up often if at all in combos. This delayed Superdash is actually very important as it's mandatory for his other better rejumps that I'm about to bring up. Try them out when you feel ready. Remember, there's no rush. You can practice these things as much as you need to before moving on to the rest. This video won't go anywhere, take your time. Next up we have his j.LS rejump, which looks like this. Delay super dash until the opponent splats off the wall so it hits them as low as possible, then do an air dash into j.L and a slightly delayed j.S so Baseku touches the ground quickly enough. Very similar to his corner j.LS j.M link from earlier in the video. What you do after j.S is basically just what you do for Vanish confirms, whichever route you prefer and have the hitstun decay low enough for. You can do j.M5M into an air beam combo, j.M5H j.SSS up beam, 5LLL j.36S and so on. If you happen to reach the corner, you'll be able to go into his loops like so. The ender for j.SSS Oki would also work there. Be careful however, as combos with this rejump are a bit more finicky with hitstun decay, so you will have to figure out what to do yourself off scaled and unscaled starters. In the corner, it's possible to improve the 5LLL loops we talked about earlier today by doing delay j.M, delay j.S instead of air dash j.LS. It certainly adds some difficulty, but I think the delays for this are lenient enough that it's pretty consistently doable once you get the timing down. Be aware that while this leads to more damage due to the big hits first rule, it consumes a little more hitstun decay, so you may have to adjust your enders sometimes. You may also find sometimes doing j.MS and then j.LS for the second loop is optimal, especially when going for j.SSS knockdowns. Doing delay j.M, delay j.S into j.M is possible, but very difficult by comparison and usually takes up too much combo time, but not always. See, this kind of stuff is why figuring out optimals with Baseku is a pain in the ass, frankly. There's lots and lots of things to tinker with to get that extra bit of damage at the start or that extra little hit near the end. Hence, I recommend you get these things down as concepts you're able to execute and do your best to improvise on the fly during matches or just lab out some combos off scaled starters that you know will always be consistent for you. Now here come the hardest parts of Baseku's combo theory to my knowledge. For one, Baseku is able to rejump mid-screen using delay j.M, delay j.S like this. Delay on j.M is smaller, delay on j.S is bigger. For this to work, you must delay your super dash as much as humanly possible. This will give you a good chunk more damage than j.LS if you're able to do it though. With the right delays, it's possible to make this rejump go into 5LLL without you having to do an extra dash up before the auto combo. But it's a little finicky, as sometimes the 5LLL just whiffs, the third part of it anyway. On the other hand, just doing the first two hits is very consistent, and from there you can go into an air beam. So go by preference. And what's more, Baseku can actually use his j.36S to set up mid-screen rejumps too, and it's very much optimal because of how much damage it does, but really damn hard. It looks like this. When you do 5H j.36S, you might notice the beam freezes the opponent in place for a moment and then sends them into a huge wall bounce. To set up a rejump, you follow the same rule of thumb. Superdash should come out right about when the opponent bounces off the wall and should land as low as possible. The cue for this is more subtle than for standard 5H rejumps though, so it will take a bunch of practice to master the timing for this until you get it in your muscle memory. From there, the rejumps are the same, either air-j.LS, delay JM, delay JS, whatever. You can also use these in vanish confirms after 5LLL 236S for example. Good luck with these. For what it's worth, the easiest beam rejump is delay Superdash into delay JM, delay JS, and 5LL into an air combo like this. This is easier because the delays are much more lenient than for other beam rejumps, and you could honestly use this as your bread and butter combo if you're skilled enough. One more similar thing that Baseku can do is a delay JM, delay JS rejump like this after his QSSS. If you land QSSS on opponents near the ground, you can just super dash without timing it. But if you land the key blasts against opponents high up in the air, you do actually need to time the super dash. Kind of like GW's j.MH rejump if you're familiar with it. Whatever the case, this boosts Baseku's mid-screen max damage considerably because he can get away with doing stuff like this, which just gives him a lot to work with. Now I want to talk about Sideswitch j.MS. This bit of combo tech is pretty underexplored to my knowledge, since I found it only recently and it requires some pretty specific setups. But I'm gonna go over it anyway, since it can come in handy sometimes and you might just be able to find more uses for it. You never know. Here's a universal example of it. The way it works is you need to get Baseku right under the opponent so that j.MH pushes him forward enough to go behind them while still hitting them. In that UH combo, I delayed my j.L ever so slightly after the jump cancel since that moves Baseku forward more. Then I did j.LM to stay at the same height and delayed j.MH. Then j.M side switched. Now the part that sucks is you can't really do this off any setup. For example, it's also possible off 5LLL like this. But here the setup was entirely different because I did j.L, delay j.M, delay j.MH after the jump cancel. Another setup I found for it is QSSS into up beam. You can see it here. Here you need to leave a micro delay between the jump cancel and j.LM, just like for the QH combo. You can also do it off just 2 key blasts into up beam if you want, but this only really works off quick starters like 5H. The problem with this one is that it's not universal. It's finicky as hell in fact. Now at low enough hitstun decay, you can do Superdash, j.LML2H, j.L delay JF, delay 2H, and Z Broly is the only character this doesn't work on. But then if you actually optimize your combo a bit and get to higher hitstun decay, you aren't able to do that anymore because j.L just no longer has the hitstun left to allow for a delayed JM. Instead, you have to go back to doing j.MH and then jump cancel into a micro delay j.LM. But then that doesn't work against Z Broly, Cooler, 16, Trunks, Gotenks, and potentially others I've forgotten. As you can see, Sideswitch j.Ms are really weird and wacky, but they can boost the efficiency of his max damage routes, so feel free to experiment with them if you want. And finally, some routes that are mostly there for style points, since some players still like to use them occasionally. 5LL 2M delay 5M into this is an example of a JS-JL link. Here you must do j.L delay j.LL. The delay varies based on character size, smaller delay on smalls, bigger delay on bigs. Be warned that it's kinda very difficult. If your starter is 5LL 2M delay 5M, you'll have to jump cancel backwards, and the JS-JL link is universal. If you start with only 2M5M, you jump cancel straight up, and the link only works on medium-sized characters and above. Another example of this link, and the one where it's most commonly seen, is after spending up smash. So after 2H or J2H. You can do Superdash, j.ML 2H, j.L delay j.LL j.S, and then link back into another j.L from there. Make sure to jump cancel backwards. Some people say delaying the Superdash helps make it more consistent for them, so feel free to try that. Once again, delay on j.LL is character size dependent, and be aware this link is pretty hard. Off more horizontal launchers like 5H236S, it's possible to set up this link by just omitting J2H entirely from it. Lastly, against small characters in particular, it's possible to set up air beams so that J236S Superdash JS j.L works. Here's a cool staircase combo I came up with a while ago using these kinds of links. Now let's go over some important sparking routes. In case you're new and kinda just skipped to this section, sparking not only boosts your raw damage a tremendous amount, but also makes you able to jump cancel and air dash cancel every single normal, which makes for some really crazy combos. When your Baseku is in sparking, you should pretty much always maximize damage, since in 90% of cases your opponent is going to die if you do. The easiest way to do this is with empty vanish combos. For example, after any beam, you can empty vanish into j.MS air dash j.M delay j.S and continue your combo from there. This gives you super high damage combos that are relatively easy, such as these. If you trust your execution, you can take things a step further and loop that sequence by doing 2M delay 5M, j.M delay j.S air dash j.M delay j.S into a ground normal. That's a lot of words, but this is especially good off raw beams, and it looks like this. Another more optimal way you can boost your damage is by doing air dash j.MS after 2 SSS like this. This is pretty difficult to time and will require some practice, but it makes every hit hurt like hell, to the point you might TOD people on accident. And now we can talk about his iconic sparking loops in the corner. They are simple as just repeating 5LLL IAD j.MS 5LLL until you can't do it anymore. Extremely high damage and surprisingly light on hitstun decay. Always do them when you can. In my experience labbing this character, it's usually optimal to do 2 auto combo loops into IAD j.M delay j.S 2M 5M and then the final air combo. But always be ready to experiment with all the options you have. Baseku is also able to loop 2M5H in the corner in sparking. Compared to looping 5LLL, this isn't actually optimal as far as my labbing tells me, but it looks pretty cool nonetheless. It looks like this. In order to make these work, when you do j.MS, you must delay the j.S as much as possible so that Baseku's 2M catches the opponent as high up as possible. Baseku doesn't get a lot of new enders with sparking, but it's worth noting 236's empty vanish j.DR works at the end of any combo, so it's good for squeezing in a little extra damage if you ever need it. Here's an example of a TOD that incorporates a lot of what we've talked about. Now then, let's talk Kaioken. This level 1 is crazy as it basically lets you make your own custom super. If you want, you can kinda just press whatever buttons you like during it, no shame in that. But there's ways to ensure it always deals as much damage as it possibly can, so let's go over them. The most important rule to remember when creating Kaioken routes is do not repeat anything. When you use the same Kaioken button more than once, it deals less damage, so you want to avoid that as much as possible. Kaioken times 2, when everyone on the team is alive, lets you do 3 moves before your finisher. Times 3, when a teammate is dead, lets you do 5, and times 20, when Baseku's the only one left alive, lets you do 7 attacks before the finisher. Coincidentally, you have 7 Kaioken normals total, and that's how many you get to do in times 20. So you should be able to include all of them, or at worst only repeat 1 move. Kaioken 5M will act as your Sideswitch tool if you need it for Kaioken times 2 or times 3. 5S, 2S, and 5H are moves that you should always include when possible, since they do higher damage than the others. Midscreen 5H requires certain setups to be able to combo into it. One that always works is 5L 5S 5H, and this is his highest damaging Kaioken times 2 route, but you only get to do it off sliding knockdowns that leave you close to the opponent, like Smash JH, J2M, or a low to the ground j.DR. You can't do it, for example, after a Newbie success, because 5H will just drop. After a ground DR ender, you should do a different route, which is 5S 2L 5H. Yoink, and there we go. In any other situation, you can do either 5S 2L 2S or 5S 5M 2S to Sideswitch, depending on what side you want. For Kaioken times 3, you can do 5L 5S 5H, and then follow up with a 5M 2S or a 2M 2S, depending on what side you want. Off ground DR, same deal, you can do 5S 2L 5H, and then either 5M or 2M depending on what side you want. Off any other ender, 5S 5L 5M, 5S 5H should be your go-to. For times 20, you can do something like 5L 5S 5H, 5M 2M 2L 2S, and so on. The only way you can keep sides after 5H here is by repeating a normal that would replace 5M. Off a ground DR ender, you can try something different in 5S 2L 5H, and then 5M 5L 2M 2S. Off any other ender, your go-to can be 5S 5L 5M 5S 5H 2M 2S, and that will do. That's about it for mid-screen routes. You should note, however, that 5L 5S 5H will drop if you're close to the corner, as you can see here, because Goku kinda just slips right under the opponent. When you're near or in the corner, you can always go with 5S 2L 5H, and just like that, go from there. You will need to be mindful of your position on the screen. If you're hugging the corner, 5L 5H will also always work. 5S 5H can work as well if they're knocked down. Feel free to change around the Kaioken normals however you want, just make sure to follow the rules I've laid out for you. Also, make sure to end corner times 20 routes in particular in 5L 2M 2S. This will give you the best level 2 Oki at plus 26. Other enders tend to leave you plus 25, which may not seem like the end of the world, but even just one frame can be what makes the difference between kudoki and the fuck up. Lastly, roots for happy birthdays. A happy birthday is when you combo not only the opposing character, but also their assist. We call this a Merry Christmas if we combo all three characters. Kaioken isn't the best super for this, since a lot of Kaioken normals and even the finisher tend to send assists out of the combo. Still, there's ways to make it work. Your go-to happy birthday route should be 5L 2M 2L, after which you immediately DHC into your other character's supers. If you're in Kaioken times 3, you can start with those 3 buttons, 5L 2M 2L, and then just mash L for the last Chew and go straight into his level 2 beam if you want, which also hits assist, yes. If you're in times 20, same thing, 5L 2M 2L, then mash 5L for the rest and go straight into his beam afterwards. Just like that. These are Baseku's happy birthday routes. And with that, we have finally reached the end of this combo guide. I hope I managed to explain everything clearly without it all being too overwhelming. Make sure to take every bit of tech one step at a time and practice as much as you need to. You can return to this video at any time to recheck things, and don't be afraid to ask questions in the comments either. You can also find the link to the Baseku Discord server in the description. Join in and get help from me and other dedicated mains of this character, however few of us there may be, with whatever you may need, or draw some inspiration from the crapped out of combos I post in there. Speaking of getting help from the server, thank you KatKat for exploring this character with me and finding some interesting stuff I didn't know about. It's been fun labbing things out with you. Anyway, with all that said, go kick some ass, Saiyans from Earth. You got this. I myself am completely worn out from this though, so I'm gonna leave for now. Take care.